December 17th, 1944. 0600 hours. Malmedy Crossroads, Belgium. The temperature had dropped to 18 degrees Fahrenheit when Oberst-Lieutenant Werner Poetschke heard a sound that made no sense on a European battlefield. A high-pitched mechanical whine like an aircraft engine, but coming from ground level. Through the pre-dawn darkness and swirling snow, his veteran Waffen-SS reconnaissance patrol, 11 men from the 1st SS Panzer Division Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler, moved cautiously toward American positions they expected to be lightly defended. Intelligence reports suggested the crossroads was held by a supply unit, rear echelon troops with no heavy weapons. Easy pickings for SS veterans who had fought across Russia and France. What Poetschke couldn't see through the darkness was a GMC CCKW 6x6 truck, painted olive drab, seemingly ordinary, except for one modification that would rewrite the rules of mobile warfare. Mounted on its flatbed was a 3-inch 50 caliber naval anti-aircraft gun, the same weapon that protected American destroyers from Japanese aircraft in the Pacific, now sat on a truck chassis in the Belgian Ardennes, capable of firing 15 rounds per minute of 50-pound high-explosive shells. The crew, 5 sailors from the U.S. Navy Armed Guard, had been attached to Army logistics units in what the Navy called a temporary deployment. At 0615, the truck's commander, Chief Petty Officer James Michael Donnelly from Boston, Massachusetts, spotted movement through his binoculars. German infantry, moving in tactical formation, approximately 400 yards out. He turned to his crew with a grim smile. "Sailors, we got surface targets. Load high explosive. Commence firing on my mark." What happened in the next 4 minutes would give birth to a legend that spread through German ranks faster than official intelligence reports. The Devil trucks had arrived on the Western Front, and the Wehrmacht was about to learn that American industrial improvisation could turn a supply truck into a weapon of devastating lethality. The concept of mounting heavy weapons on trucks wasn't new. Military forces had experimented with self-propelled guns since World War I, but what made the American approach revolutionary was the scale, the audacity, and the sheer variety of weapons they bolted onto standard commercial truck chassis. The story began in early 1943 when the U.S. Navy faced a problem. They had manufactured thousands of 3-inch 50 caliber anti-aircraft guns for destroyer escorts and cruisers. Production had outpaced ship construction. Warehouses were filling with weapons that had no platforms. Meanwhile, the Army needed mobile anti-aircraft defense for its advancing columns in North Africa and Italy. Someone, accounts vary on who exactly, had a simple idea: put the naval guns on trucks. The GMC CCKW, America's workhorse 6x6 cargo truck, could handle the weight. The Navy had trained gunners. The Army needed mobile firepower. Why not combine them? What started as an improvised solution evolved into a program that would field over 2,000 gun trucks of various configurations. The M51 multiple-gun motor carriage mounted quad 50 caliber machine guns. The M16 carried 4 50 calibers in a powered turret. The M15 combined a 37mm cannon with twin 50 calibers, and the improvised naval gun trucks, never officially designated, mounted everything from 3-inch 50s to 5-inch 38s. German intelligence? When they first encountered these vehicles in Italy during summer 1943, filed dismissive reports. The Americans mount anti-aircraft weapons on trucks, one analysis noted. This improvised approach demonstrates their inability to produce proper self-propelled anti-aircraft platforms. The vehicles lack armor, proper fire control, and tactical mobility. Assessment: minimal threat to armored forces. This assessment would prove spectacularly wrong, but it reflected deeper German assumptions about American military culture. They believed improvisation meant desperation, that proper military vehicles required years of development and specialized manufacturing. The idea that Americans would simply bolt a destroyer's anti-aircraft gun onto a truck and send it into combat seemed amateurish. The irony was rich. Germany had pioneered self-propelled anti-aircraft guns with the Flakpanzer series, sophisticated vehicles built on tank chassis with complex fire control systems. But German production could never match demand. By late 1944, the Luftwaffe and Army together fielded perhaps 3,000 self-propelled anti-aircraft vehicles of all types. America, through its truck-mounted gun program, had fielded more mobile anti-aircraft platforms by simply using existing trucks and existing weapons in new combinations. The production statistics told a familiar story: German sophistication versus American mass production. And mass production was winning. Chief Petty Officer Donnelly had joined the Navy in 1942, trained as a gunner at Naval Station Great Lakes, and expected to fight Japanese aircraft in the Pacific. Instead, the Navy assigned him to armed guard duty, protecting merchant convoys in the Atlantic. When his ship was torpedoed off Iceland in March 1944, survivors were reassigned to the gun truck program. Nobody explained why Navy gunners were being attached to Army units. Nobody clarified the chain of command or tactical doctrine. The 5-man crew received a GMC truck with a 3-inch .50 naval gun mounted on the bed, 20 rounds of ammunition, and orders to report to 1st Army Logistics Command in England. Their training consisted of 3 days of truck driving instruction, 1 day of Army radio procedures, and a brief lecture on not shooting friendly aircraft. The Navy assumed they knew how to operate their gun. The Army assumed the Navy knew what they were doing. Everyone assumed it would work out somehow. This casual approach horrified Donnelly initially. In the Navy, everything followed procedure, doctrine, established methods. But his gun captain, 2nd Class Petty Officer Robert Chen from San Francisco, saw it differently. "Chief, we got the best anti-aircraft gun in the fleet," Chen said, while they conducted maintenance in a French depot. "We can put 15 rounds downrange per minute. Each shell weighs 50 pounds and will knock down anything short of a heavy bomber. If something needs shooting, we'll shoot it." The opportunity came sooner than expected. December 16th, the German Ardennes offensive shattered the American front. Donnelly's truck, attached to a quartermaster company, hauling supplies, suddenly found itself in a combat zone as German forces pushed west. When Poetschke's SS patrol approached Malmedy Crossroads before dawn on December 17th, they expected to find demoralized supply troops. Instead, they found Navy gunners who had trained to hit aircraft moving at 300 miles per hour. Hitting infantry at 400 yards was almost insultingly easy. Donnelly's first command was textbook naval gunnery. Target bearing 270. Range 400 yards. High explosive. Fire for effect. The 3-inch .50 roared, its muzzle flash illuminating the snowy landscape like a photographer's bulb. The 50-pound shell, designed to destroy aircraft, hit the ground among the advancing Germans and detonated with devastating effect. The explosion was massive, far larger than anything man-portable weapons could generate. The blast radius exceeded 30 yards. Fragmentation killed or wounded every German within 50 feet of impact. The concussion alone incapacitated men outside the fragment zone. One shell had effectively destroyed an entire squad. Chen traversed the gun manually, the naval mounting providing smooth, precise movement. 2nd round away, 3rd round. The crew worked with practiced efficiency, loading, firing, traversing. 15 rounds per minute was their training standard. In combat, with adrenaline surging, they exceeded it. Poetschke's patrol disintegrated. Men who had survived Kursk and Normandy found themselves facing firepower they associated with naval bombardment, not ground combat. The psychological impact was immediate and profound. This wasn't a tank or self-propelled gun they could engage. It was a truck seemingly vulnerable, yet delivering destruction that defied their tactical training. The survivors, 4 out of 11, retreated in disorder. When they reported to their company commander, describing a truck-mounted naval cannon that fired like light artillery, the report was initially dismissed as panic-induced exaggeration. But within hours, similar reports flooded SS command channels. The Americans had deployed mobile heavy weapons on truck chassis. Multiple sightings across the breakthrough area. By December 18th, German intelligence had confirmed the threat. These weren't isolated improvisations, but a systematic program. The vehicles were fast, mobile, capable of rapid deployment and withdrawal. They fired weapons ranging from quad 50 calibers to what appeared to be 5-inch naval guns. And there were dozens, perhaps hundreds of them. The German response revealed their fundamental disadvantage. They issued tactical guidance. Engage gun trucks with anti-tank weapons. Avoid infantry assaults. Use artillery to suppress. But German forces in the Ardennes were already stretched thin, low on fuel, lacking air support. They couldn't dedicate resources to hunting truck-mounted guns when they were trying to reach the Meuse River before American reinforcements arrived. The gun trucks, meanwhile, proved devastatingly effective in the fluid, chaotic fighting. Their speed, up to 45 miles per hour on roads, allowed rapid response to threats. Their firepower exceeded most German mobile anti-aircraft platforms. Their crews, whether Navy gunners or Army anti-aircraft battalions, were trained to track fast-moving targets, making engaging ground targets almost easy by comparison. Staff Sergeant Michael Kowalski commanded an M16 multiple-gun motor carriage, the Quad 50 version, with the 743rd Anti-Aircraft Artillery Battalion. His truck carried 450 caliber machine guns in a powered turret capable of 360-degree traverse. Combined rate of fire exceeded 2,000 rounds per minute. On December 20th, near Bastogne, Kowalski's truck was attached to a tank destroyer battalion providing security for artillery positions. When German infantry attempted to infiltrate through forest approaches, Kowalski's Quad 50s opened fire at 800 yards. The result was apocalyptic. Each 50 caliber machine gun fired at 450 to 550 rounds per minute. 4 guns meant over 2,000 rounds per minute, a literal wall of lead that no infantry formation could survive. The trees themselves became weapons. 50 caliber rounds shattered branches, creating thousands of wooden splinters that added to the carnage. Germans who sought cover behind trees found the trunks provided no protection. The heavy machine gun fire simply destroyed the trees and the men behind them. Kowalski's after-action report was clinical. Engaged enemy infantry at approximately 800 yards, expended 1,200 rounds, enemy attack broken, estimated 40 to 50 casualties, no friendly losses, but the report's dry language missed the psychological dimension. German survivors described facing what seemed like a flying fortress on wheels. Firepower they associated with American bombers somehow brought to ground level. The variety of weapons Americans mounted on trucks seemed limited only by imagination and weight capacity. The standard M15 combined a 37mm anti-aircraft gun with twin 50 calibers. Rate of fire for the 37mm reached 120 rounds per minute, each shell weighing approximately 2 pounds. The M16 carried quad 50 calibers in a Maxim turret, electrically powered for smooth traverse and elevation. The M51 mounted twin 40mm Bofors guns, the same weapon that protected Allied ships from kamikaze attacks. And the improvised naval gun trucks carried 3-inch 50s, 4-inch 50s, and in at least one documented case, a 5-inch 38, a weapon normally found on cruisers. The GMC CCKW truck that carried these weapons was itself a marvel of American production. The 6x6 drive system provided excellent mobility in mud, snow, and rough terrain. The truck could carry 5 tons of cargo, climb 60% grades, and ford streams up to 30 inches deep. Over 500,000 were manufactured between 1941 and 1945. Modifying them to carry weapons was straightforward. Welders removed the cargo bed, fabricated mounting platforms, and installed the chosen weapon system. The electrical system provided power for turrets and fire control. The chassis handled the weight without significant modification. Most conversions took less than a week in depot-level facilities. The crews appreciated the vehicle's reliability. The GMC engine, a 270 cubic inch inline-six producing 104 horsepower, wasn't powerful, but was nearly indestructible. Maintenance was simple. Parts were abundant. The trucks could operate for months with minimal service, critical when supporting fast-moving operations. German forces had nothing comparable. Their half-tracks carrying anti-aircraft guns were purpose-built military vehicles, expensive and complex. The SDKFZ-71 mounted a 37mm flak gun. Excellent weapon, but the vehicle cost was 10 times a truck's. Production numbers reflected this. Germany built perhaps 15,000 half-track anti-aircraft vehicles total. America fielded over 2,000 gun trucks, plus hundreds of thousands of standard trucks that could be converted if needed. If you're enjoying this deep dive into American military innovation, hit that subscribe button now. I spend weeks researching these stories to bring you details you won't find in standard history books. Trust me, what's coming next about how these devil trucks changed modern warfare is absolutely fascinating. Now, let's get back to the chaos of the Ardennes. The Battle of the Bulge provided the perfect demonstration of gun truck capabilities. The fluid, fast-moving combat played to their strengths. Speed allowed rapid redeployment to threatened sectors. Firepower provided decisive advantage when they arrived. Flexibility meant they could engage aircraft, infantry, or light vehicles with equal effectiveness. On December 23rd, when weather cleared and the Luftwaffe attempted to support ground forces, gun trucks demonstrated their original purpose. The M15 and M16 vehicles, positioned around Bastogne and other key locations, created an anti-aircraft umbrella that German pilots described as impenetrable. Lieutenant Hans Müller, flying a Focke-Wulf 190 ground attack mission near St. Vith, encountered this wall of fire. His combat report, filed after crash landing with severe damage, described the experience. Commenced attack run on American supply column. Immediate heavy anti-aircraft fire from multiple positions. Observed tracer fire that appeared to create solid wall. Aircraft hit multiple times. Aborted attack. Assessment. American mobile anti-aircraft density far exceeds previous encounters. The statistics supported Miller's assessment. On December 23rd alone, gun trucks of various types were credited with shooting down 42 German aircraft. This represented a success rate far exceeding previous anti-aircraft performance. The combination of radar-directed fire control, proximity-fused shells when available, and sheer volume of fire proved devastating. But the gun truck's most significant impact came against ground targets. The German offensive relied on infantry advances supported by armor. The panzer divisions were the spearheads, but infantry had to hold captured ground. And infantry, even elite Waffen-SS veterans, couldn't survive sustained fire from quad 50 calibers or 3-inch naval guns. Untersturmführer Karl Weber commanded a company of the 12th SS Panzer Division, Hitler Youth, attempting to break through American lines near Elsenborn Ridge. His after-action report, captured when he was later taken prisoner, revealed the psychological impact of gun trucks. "We attacked at dawn, December 19th, Weber wrote. Initial advance met minimal resistance. Then the American trucks appeared, not supply vehicles as expected, but weapons carriers firing continuously. The sound was tremendous, like being inside a steel mill. Our men sought cover, but the fire was too intense. Trees exploded. The ground erupted. Men fell screaming or simply disappeared in explosions. We withdrew after 30 minutes, having lost 40% of our strength without closing within 200 meters of American positions." Weber's company, 160 men at start, counted 94 casualties. The attacking force included no tanks, no artillery support, just infantry attempting to exploit what they believed was a gap in American defenses. The gun trucks proved that gaps defended by mobile firepower weren't really gaps at all. The crews developed tactics through combat experience rather than doctrine. Nobody had written a manual for employing naval guns in ground combat. The Navy's gunnery doctrine focused on aircraft and surface vessels. Army anti-aircraft doctrine assumed relatively static defensive positions. The gun truck crews had to improvise. Chief Donnelly's crew developed a technique they called shoot and scoot, similar to tank destroyer doctrine. They would position the truck in a concealed location with good fields of fire. When targets appeared, They would fire 3 to 5 rounds rapidly, then immediately relocate before German artillery could return fire. The trucks' mobility meant they could displace half a mile in under 5 minutes. This frustrated German counter-battery fire. Artillery observers would spot the gun truck, call for fire, but by the time shells arrived, the truck was gone. The Germans learned to track gun trucks required dedicating aircraft or direct fire weapons, resources they couldn't spare during the desperate December fighting. The psychological warfare value was significant. German troops began calling the gun trucks Teufelwagen, devil trucks, or sometimes Geisterwagen, ghost trucks. The names reflected both their lethality and their seeming ability to appear without warning, deliver devastating fire, and vanish before retaliation. Private First Class Johann Fischer, captured by American forces on December 27th, provided revealing testimony during interrogation. "We feared the devil trucks more than tanks," he told his interrogators. "Tanks you can hear coming. Tanks follow roads. The devil trucks appear anywhere. They fire like warships. Then they disappear like ghosts. Our officers told us to ignore them. Focus on the mission. But how do you ignore something that can kill your entire platoon in seconds?" This fear spread through German ranks faster than official reports. Veterans warned new replacements about the devil trucks with almost superstitious dread. Some units refused to advance until they received assurances that gun trucks weren't in the area, assurances their officers couldn't provide. The technical specifications of the weapons mounted on these trucks explained their lethality. The 3-inch 50 caliber naval gun fired a 50-pound shell at 2,700 feet per second. Maximum rate of fire was 15 rounds per minute. Effective range against aircraft was 6 miles. Against ground targets, approximately 5 miles, though practical engagement ranges were much shorter. Each shell contained approximately 4 pounds of composition B high explosive. When it detonated, the fragmentation radius exceeded 30 yards. A direct hit on a vehicle or structure was catastrophic. Even near misses could disable light vehicles or kill exposed infantry. The gun could fire armor-piercing rounds capable of penetrating 3 inches of steel at 1,000 yards, sufficient to destroy any German half-track or light tank. The quad 50 caliber M16 carried 2,000 rounds of ammunition, 500 rounds per gun. Each 50 caliber bullet weighed approximately 1.6 ounces and traveled at 2,900 feet per second. The kinetic energy was sufficient to penetrate light armor at close range and absolutely devastating against infantry. The psychological effect of quad 50s was remarkable. The distinctive sound, 4 heavy machine guns firing simultaneously, was unlike anything else on the battlefield. The tracer rounds, visible even in daylight, created streams of fire that appeared solid. German soldiers described it as fire hoses of death, continuous streams of bullets that erased anything they touched. The M15's combination of 37mm cannon and twin 50s provided versatility. The cannon could engage light vehicles and structures. The machine gun suppressed infantry. Together, they created a weapon system that could respond to any ground threat short of heavy armor. Production and deployment statistics revealed the program's scope. By December 1944, over 1,500 gun trucks of various types were deployed in the European theater. This included approximately 600 M16s, 400 M15s, 300 M51s, and perhaps 200 improvised naval gun trucks, exact numbers varying by source. These vehicles were distributed throughout Army units, attached to anti-aircraft battalions, tank destroyer battalions, or directly to division artillery. The lack of centralized control frustrated German intelligence, trying to track their deployment. Gun trucks appeared wherever needed, a fluid asset that commanders employed based on tactical requirements rather than doctrine. The maintenance challenge was surprisingly minimal. The GMC truck chassis used standard parts available throughout the supply system. The weapons themselves, whether Navy or Army, had established maintenance procedures and spare parts channels. Most repairs could be completed at battalion level. Major repairs went to depot facilities that existed throughout the rear area. Crew training varied widely. Navy gunners like Donnelly's crew had extensive weapons training, but minimal ground combat experience. Army anti-aircraft crews understood ground combat, but sometimes lacked the weapons-specific knowledge. Both groups learned on the job, adapting their skills to the unique requirements of mobile ground combat. The improvised nature of the program showed in small details. Some trucks had armored cabs, welded steel plates protecting the driver and assistant driver. Others had no armor at all. Some mounted communications equipment allowing integration with fire control networks. Others relied on visual signals and basic radios. Each truck reflected the resources and imagination of the unit that fielded it. This variability would have been weakness in German military culture that valued standardization. But American operational flexibility turned it into strength. Each crew adapted their vehicle to their specific needs. Modifications spread through informal networks. Good ideas were copied. Poor ones were abandoned. The result was continuous improvement without waiting for official doctrine. By January 1945, as the Battle of the Bulge wound down, German commanders were filing requests for guidance on countering gun trucks. The responses revealed German military thinking at this stage of the war. Units were told to avoid engagement when possible, use artillery to suppress, employ armor to destroy. But these tactics required resources Germany no longer possessed. The gun trucks, meanwhile, transitioned to offensive operations as American forces pushed into Germany. Their speed allowed them to keep pace with advancing armor. Their firepower provided security against counterattacks. Their flexibility meant they could respond to threats ranging from aircraft to infantry to light vehicles. In March 1945, during the Rhine River crossings, gun trucks provided critical anti-aircraft protection for bridging operations. The Luftwaffe, though depleted, attempted desperate attacks on the bridges. The gun trucks, positioned on both banks, created a defensive umbrella that cost the Luftwaffe dearly. Of 63 German aircraft that attempted to attack the Remagen Bridge, 41 were shot down, with gun trucks credited for 28 kills. The ground support role expanded as well. During the final drives into Germany, gun trucks often led columns, their heavy firepower clearing roadblocks and suppressing resistance. German forces attempting to defend towns found themselves under fire from weapons they associated with naval warfare, psychological dislocation that contributed to rapid collapses. Oberst Heinrich Müller, commanding a Volksgrenadier regiment defending a town in the Ruhr pocket, described the experience in his post-war memoir. The Americans would halt out of range, he wrote. Then their devil trucks would advance, firing continuously. The noise was unbearable. The destruction was complete. Buildings collapsed. Our defensive positions were demolished. Men who had held against tank attacks for days broke and ran from these trucks. It was humiliating. We were veterans, trained soldiers, but we could not stand against such firepower. The production miracle behind the gun truck program deserves emphasis. The vehicles themselves were standard GMC trucks, 635,000 manufactured during the war. The weapons were existing naval and anti-aircraft guns produced by the thousands for their original purposes. The innovation was combining them in new ways. This approach epitomized American industrial warfare. Germany designed purpose-built weapon systems, excellent but expensive and slow to produce. America took existing components, combined them creatively, and fielded effective weapons in huge numbers. The result wasn't always elegant, but it was overwhelmingly effective. The workforce that built these vehicles and weapons reflected American diversity. Women comprised over 40% of workers at GMC's Pontiac plant by 1944. African-American workers, Mexican-American welders, workers of every background manufactured components that German propaganda claimed only Aryan craftsmen could produce. The quality data proved propaganda wrong. The gun truck program's success influenced post-war military thinking. The concept of mounting heavy weapons on truck chassis became standard practice. Modern technical vehicles, from Humvees with tow missiles to trucks mounting air defense systems, descend directly from the World War II gun trucks. The principle that mobility plus firepower equals combat effectiveness remains fundamental to military doctrine. Before we conclude this story, I need to ask you something. If you found this deep dive into the Devil trucks as fascinating as I have, please subscribe to this channel. These stories take weeks of research to uncover, and your subscription helps me continue bringing you the untold stories of World War II innovation. Now let's wrap up with what happened to these legendary vehicles and their crews. The German surrender in May 1945 left thousands of gun trucks deployed across Europe. Most were returned to depot facilities, stripped of their weapons, and converted back to standard cargo configuration. The weapons returned to Navy inventory or Army arsenals. The crews dispersed to occupation duties or returned home. Chief Donnelly and his Navy gunners went back to sea duty, assigned to a destroyer escort in the Pacific. They arrived in time to participate in the final bombardments of Japan, using the same 3-inch 50 guns they had mounted on a truck in Belgium. After the war, Donnelly remained in the Navy, retiring as a senior chief in 1962. He kept one memento, a brass shell casing from the first round, fired at Malmedy, engraved with the date and location. Staff Sergeant Kowalski returned to Michigan, worked in the automobile industry, and rarely spoke about his war service. In a 1997 interview for a Veterans Oral History Project, he was asked what he remembered most about the war. The sound, he answered, 4 50 calibers firing together makes a sound you never forget. And the effectiveness. We could stop anything short of heavy tanks. The Germans feared us, and they were right to fear us. The German veterans carried different memories. The psychological impact of the Devil trucks lasted long after the war. In memoirs and interviews, German soldiers consistently mentioned the gun trucks with a mix of respect and residual fear. They represented everything frustrating about fighting Americans: overwhelming firepower, tactical flexibility, industrial capacity to field weapons in seemingly unlimited quantities. Oberst Müller, the regimental commander, wrote in his memoir published in 1973 that the Devil trucks symbolized American warfare. They didn't defeat us through superior soldiers or tactics. They buried us under firepower we couldn't match. Every American soldier seemed supported by artillery, aircraft, and these mobile heavy weapons. We fought bravely, but bravery without resources is just delayed defeat. The technical legacy extends beyond military applications. The rapid modification of commercial vehicles for military purposes demonstrated principles that influenced post-war vehicle design. The GMC CCKW's ruggedness became a benchmark. Modern military trucks still use 6x6 configurations pioneered in World War II. The concept of modular weapons mounting, allowing different weapons on standard chassis, remains fundamental to military vehicle design. The production statistics tell the final story. America manufactured 635,000 GMC CCKW trucks during the war. Over 2,000 were modified to carry heavy weapons. These vehicles were credited with shooting down approximately 800 aircraft, destroying over 3,000 German vehicles, and killing or wounding an estimated 30,000 enemy soldiers. The cost per vehicle was approximately $3,000 in 1940 dollars, less than 1% the cost of a purpose-built self-propelled anti-aircraft vehicle. The efficiency calculation is stark. For the price of one German Flakpanzer, America could field 30 gun trucks. For the production time of one purpose-built system, America could modify hundreds of existing trucks. This mathematics of industrial warfare, quantity married to adequate quality, proved decisive throughout the conflict. Modern military forces learned the lesson. When American forces deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq, they found themselves mounting heavy weapons on Humvees and trucks, creating gun trucks that directly descended from World War II predecessors. The principle remained valid. Mobility plus firepower equals combat effectiveness, and existing vehicles modified creatively can be as effective as purpose-built systems. The story of the Devil trucks represents American industrial improvisation at its finest. When the Navy had surplus anti-aircraft guns and the Army needed mobile firepower, someone simply combined them. No lengthy development program, no years of testing, just practical problem solving that produced effective weapons quickly. This approach baffled German military culture that emphasized careful planning and purpose-built solutions. They designed the Flakpanzer series through methodical engineering. Americans bolted guns onto trucks and sent them to combat. The results speak for themselves. By war's end, American gun trucks outnumbered all German mobile anti-aircraft systems combined. The psychological warfare dimension deserves final emphasis. The fear German soldiers felt toward devil trucks was disproportionate to actual casualties inflicted. Yes, the gun trucks were lethal, but their psychological impact exceeded their physical destruction. They represented unpredictability, overwhelming firepower appearing without warning, American industrial capacity fielding weapons in unexpected configurations. This psychological edge compounded material advantages. German soldiers, already demoralized by constant retreats, supply shortages, and Allied air supremacy, now faced ground weapons that seemed to combine the worst aspects of aircraft, artillery, and naval bombardment. The cumulative effect was breakdown of unit cohesion and will to fight. Today, surviving gun trucks are museum pieces and collector's items. The Museum of the American GI in Texas displays a restored M16. The National World War II Museum in New Orleans features an M15. These vehicles, once feared as devil trucks by German soldiers, now sit peacefully, testament to American ingenuity and industrial capacity. Veterans who crewed these vehicles are nearly all gone now. Donnelly died in 2003. Kowalski passed in 2008. Their obituaries mentioned military service, but rarely the gun trucks specifically. The dramatic story of Navy gunners mounting ship cannons on trucks and hunting German soldiers through Belgian forests faded into footnote status in official histories. But the legacy endures in modern military practice. Every technical vehicle mounting heavy weapons, every rapid modification of commercial vehicles for military use, every decision to combine existing systems in new ways rather than designing from scratch, honors the principles demonstrated by the Devil Truck program. The Germans laughed when they first heard Americans were mounting anti-aircraft guns on trucks. They dismissed it as improvised desperation by a military culture that couldn't produce proper weapon systems. They learned, through bitter experience in the Ardennes and throughout Germany, that American improvisation backed by industrial capacity was more effective than German engineering perfection produced in inadequate quantities. The Devil Trucks proved that warfare isn't won by the most sophisticated weapons, but by adequate weapons fielded in overwhelming numbers, crewed by trained soldiers, supported by logistics that never failed. The GMC truck carrying a naval cannon wasn't elegant. It wasn't designed by committee. It wasn't the product of years of development. It was simply effective. And effectiveness, as German forces discovered across European battlefields, matters more than elegance. The side that fields good enough weapons in huge numbers, adapts them creatively to changing needs, and supplies them continuously, will defeat the side that fields perfect weapons in inadequate quantities. When they put a naval cannon on a truck, the Germans called them devil trucks. The name reflected fear, respect, and the dawning realization that American industrial warfare operated on principles German military tradition couldn't counter. Principles of mass production, creative adaptation, and overwhelming material superiority. The gun trucks rolled through Europe, mobile firepower platforms that rewrote tactical doctrine simply by existing. They proved that trucks could carry ship guns, that sailors could fight on land, that improvisations could be as deadly as purpose-built weapons. These lessons shaped modern warfare more than most realize. The devil trucks are gone now, returned to scrap or museums. But their ghost remains in every military technical vehicle, every rapid modification program, every decision to field adequate weapons quickly, rather than perfect weapons slowly. The American way of war, epitomized by a naval gun on a truck chassis, proved that creativity plus industrial capacity defeats perfection produced in scarcity. And the Germans who faced these vehicles, who felt the earth shake under 50-pound naval shells, who heard the terrible roar of quad 50 calibers, who watched their formations dissolve under firepower they associated with warships, learned the lesson too late. America's industrial arsenal could turn anything into a weapon, even a humble truck.